All right, we started off with godliness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. I'd like to look at some verses from the 33rd Psalm. What a joy for the nation whose God is the Lord. The best equipped army cannot save a king. We depend on the Lord alone to save us. In him our heart rejoices. We are trusting in his holy name. Let your unfailing love surround us, Lord, for our hope is in you alone. This weekend, July 4th, we're celebrating the birth of our country. And it's interesting to me that one of the things that caused the early settlers to secede from England and cause the Revolutionary War, etc., was freedom of religion. They didn't want to be forced to be members of the Church of England anymore. And yet, in churches across America today, every single one of us will experience one of our lowest attendances of the year. Just take a look around. There will be hundreds of thousands of Christians who are celebrating freedom in our country. One of the things being freedom of religion, who will opt out of going to church today. That seems kind of a contradiction, doesn't it? You would think, and I'm not just talking about people, I'm talking about Christian people. You would think that today they would say, wow, I'm really glad, even though religious freedom is being eroded in our country, people get arrested for refusing to participate in things that they find immoral. I've been telling you for over 5 years now, I think that what I'm doing is going to eventually become illegal, and I think we're getting closer and closer to that. But there are hundreds of thousands of Christians today who will opt out of exercising that freedom of religion. We're told by our president and others that the United States is not a Christian nation. But in Proverbs 13:34, as we've already read, godliness exalts a nation. Sin is a disgrace to any people. We call ourselves one nation under God. It's still on our money. I don't know how much longer it will be. In God we trust. The people who founded our country said they wanted to form a new Israel. We pride ourselves on being the land of the free and the home of the brave. Really, America's been a miracle. In getting ready for this sermon, I found some information about some of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence. Things I did not know. I thought maybe you'd be interested in hearing them. Although, like me, after you hear them, you probably won't remember them, but it's interesting to hear. Of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence, 5 were captured by the British, tortured, and executed. 12 of them had their homes burned. 2 lost sons in the Revolutionary War, and another 2 sons were captured. 9 of the signers themselves died as a result of the battle. Nearly all of them lost their fortunes in the war, and during the Battle of Yorktown, Thomas Nelson Jr. noticed that the British General Cornwallis had taken over his home for his headquarters, and he urged General George Washington to open fire on his home. It was destroyed. Nelson died bankrupt. In signing the Declaration of Independence, these men pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor, and in most cases, that's exactly the price that they paid. Their lives, their home, and their sacred honor. Now, here's an interesting thing, too, and in public schools, you won't hear this anymore. All of these men, almost down to the last one, were affiliated somehow with a Christian church. The reading of the King James Bible was something common for them. They were aware that you cannot have a great nation apart from God. They based the founding of the United States of America on the old notion that no leader has any power without the Lord. And what I read from Psalms, the best equipped army cannot save a king. In our case, a president. And to modernize it, nuclear bombs, aircraft carriers, satellite spy cameras cannot save us if we lose the Lord. Now, the political climate in America is getting shakier and shakier by the day. We've lost the idea of trying to elect the most godly president of those who are running. In fact, if you take a stand for righteousness and you're running for office, you are more likely to be mocked and ridiculed and called a bigot and called intolerant. If you disagree with somebody, you're a hater now. You're not somebody who agrees to disagree. You're a hater. You hate me and everybody like me because you have a different opinion than me. That's the climate that we're in now. There's even movements now to ban the reading certain parts of the Bible in a church like ours. Imagine that. In the United States of America, it could become illegal for us to read certain parts of the Bible because it's hate speech. This is the country that we're living in now and what we're moving towards. You don't have to hear it from me to know that there is corruption at every level of government because we elect corrupt people. And so we get what we ask for. We used to be the leader of the free world, then we became the leader of the world. Now we're more like a joke. In Psalm 9:17 it says this, "Nations that forget God shall depart to hell." We're on that road. Economically, we're on the edge of destruction, having accumulated more debt in the last 7 years than we did in our entire history before that. But we're told that we're living in the best of times. Our country is turning from God. Sin is a disgrace to any people, it says, and that's where we are. Depressed yet? There's always good news, isn't there? Whatever the bad news is, there's always good news. Part of the good news is other countries are now sending missionaries to the United States because they see the trouble that we're in. And so someone cares. The gospel is being preached here in our country. The hope for our future, as it always has, lies with individuals. It starts with me. When I was in 8th grade chorus with Miss Davis, a lady who I think she had polio or something. Anyway, she walked on crutches, both her and her legs were in braces, but she would prop herself up and she would direct our little 8th grade choir. We sang a song back then, maybe you have heard it, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." Well, if there's going to be a revival in our country, you need to say, "Let it begin with me." Let the repentance begin with me. The confession begin with me. We cannot expect our country to follow God if we aren't doing that in our own homes. God has blessed us in the past. There's no reason He can't and won't do it again in the future. You might have this plaque in your house. We have it in our house. Been in our house. I don't remember when it wasn't in our house. I don't know where it came from. I'm sure Mary got it somewhere. It's a quote by Joshua when he stood before the people and he said, "Choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house," what's the rest of it? We will serve the Lord. That's right. Now that has to be more than just a plaque on the wall. Oh, you got this nice plaque on the wall. Yeah, I bought it from the Avon lady or whatever. Like I said, I don't know where my wife got it. I have zero input to those kinds of decisions. And part of the reason is, I want you to know, is because I have zero care. Okay? What do you think if I don't care, but do whatever. Okay? That's why I'll be 37 years next month. Go ahead, dear, whatever you want, all right? Those of you who are thinking about getting married someday, if you're a guy, that's a good attitude to have. Yes, dear, whatever, dear. We can't complain about the state of our country. Yeah, I see that. You hear that? You hear that? You cannot complain about the state of our country if you aren't living for God at home. It's like the person who doesn't vote but then complains about the election. If you don't do something about it, how can you complain? You know, I don't have any right to complain at home about what's on the wall because I don't express my opinion. If I was saying do this, and it wasn't being done, then okay, but I don't say anything because I truly don't care. You can't complain about the state of our country if you aren't living for God yourself. It's easy to point out other people's faults. And easy to overlook them when you look in the mirror. We're all like that. All of us. We need to start living for God at home. Is a national revival possible? I think it is. I mean, it seems like every generation says, can it possibly get any worse? And then the next generation, what happens? It gets worse. If my parents knew what was going on in our country today, I can't imagine the despair that they would have. I heard on the radio day before yesterday, I think it was Friday, that there are some people who are just opting out of everything. They don't read a newspaper, they shut off the internet, they don't watch TV news, they just can't stand it anymore. They are just, they're living their lives, you know, they're going to work and doing whatever, but they can't stand the constant barrage of what's going on in our country and how we're sliding down the hill into immorality day after day. And the most important thing that we can do is also the simplest thing that we can do, which is also the thing that most people neglect the most. You know what it is? Anybody want to guess? Prayer. That's the most important thing that we can do. It's the easiest thing that we can do, but it's the thing that we neglect the most. Would we commit ourselves to praying for our country and for our leaders? We need to do that. It might be a prayer simple like this. Let it begin with me. Let it begin with my church. Let it begin in my city. Let it extend to my country and into the world. I wonder how many of us sitting here today would be willing to put our lives on the line to save our country like they did 239 years ago. I read, and I'm going to presume that this is correct, I don't have any way to verify it, that just the hunters in the United States of America, just the people who hunt, okay? If you hunt, you have a gun, right? Just the hunters in America comprise one of the biggest armies in the world. That's not counting our military. Would you fight to save America? Would you fight to save the greatest country that has ever existed in all of creation since the beginning of time? We're losing it. And I think that we as Christians have to take a big part of the blame. Not because we're not running around with guns, but because we aren't praying. We aren't witnessing. We aren't telling others about Jesus. So when the 4th of July weekend comes, the majority of Christians opt to do something else other than exercise the freedom that we have to worship. Why is that? And is it any wonder that maybe God has said, just like it during an election, I'm going to give you guys what you asked for, and here's what we have. But it's not hopeless. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you that in spite of bad news, there's always good news. There's always good news, always. And that good news, of course, is founded in Jesus Christ. Help us to be what we say we are. The simplest thing, the most important thing, is also the most neglected thing, and that is to pray. To make sure that under our own roof, we are serving you, so that we can be an example to others. And so a revival can spread. Amen.